In this video, we're going over a key concept, principle, or law that can completely change your life. This comes from Hermetic wisdom and is actually kind of like a sub-law within the principle of rhythm, which is one of the Hermetic principles. And you've already seen probably from the title what it is we're going to cover today. And so we're going over what's called the law of neutralization. I may have misspelled that, but ultimately the law of neutralization. And so in this video, we're going to be going over what this law is and how you can start applying this in your life, because this can make a huge difference. Have you ever noticed in your life that when you have a high, like this good thing happen in your life, and you seem to be on this high, it almost always is preceded by or followed by something that's a big low. And it's almost like you have this pendulum swing in your life, right? You have, oh, I feel good, and then I don't feel so good. I have this high, and then I have this low. Well, with the law of neutralization, we can actually make it so that you're still able to experience a lot of these highs and this excitement and this joy and this peace, but without the come down or the lows, without needing to feel the opposite of that in order to balance out the feelings that you're having in the positive. And so within Hermetic wisdom, they talk about this in the law of rhythm, and they mention that how masters have mastered what's known as the principle of neutralization, or the law of neutralization. That those who have mastered Hermetic wisdom and the universal principles have mastered this principle that's within the principle of rhythm. And what it allows them to do is to experience the things that they want to experience, but again, without needing the pendulum to swing in the opposite direction to balance it out. Or better said, the pendulum still swings, but they are unaffected by it. And so here's one thing we need to understand if we're to understand this better. You see, in Hermetic wisdom, they'll talk about how you are a three-part being. So hopefully you can see that. And in fact, I'll make that a little bit bigger so you can see it. So think of yourself as this three-part being. So this triangle represents you and all the parts of you. Again, this is a generalization, but this is more or less what it is. You have this part of you that's physical, right? No one denies that. You know that you are a physical being. You have this physicality to you, and that you're living in this physical world, or so it seems. You have the five senses. That's what the physical is. It's the world of the five senses. But you also have two other parts of yourself made up by these two other sides. You have what's called the mental part of yourself, and you have what's called spirit. And so the mental, you can think of like your thoughts, obviously. That goes without saying. You can also say imaging, visualizations, things of that nature, right? This is the mental realm. Anything that has to do with that, your imaging, your thoughts, the ones you produce, the ones that come in, this is the mental side of you. Now the spiritual is a little bit different. And it's the connection to all. Connection to the divine, connection to something higher than yourself. This is kind of like your line into that, your channel into that, but it is also the emotional self. And when you think of emotion, I want you just to keep it simple, to think of emotion. So we'll break down this word as energy in motion. Okay? To keep it simple. And so this part of you is your thoughts, to keep it simple, your imaging, your visualizations. This part of you is your connection to the divine, to the all, to God, to source, whatever you want to call it, and also the emotional self, which is just energy in motion. And again, I want you to pay particular attention to that word energy, because what is it that we all now know, that's said all of the time, makes up everything in your existence? Everything that you can see, touch, and taste with your physical senses, even your thoughts. So in the mental realm, and of course in the emotional realm, because that's what it is, energy in motion, what are we told everything is? Well, at its core, it's all energy. Everything is energy. Everything is made up of the same stuff. The physical stuff that you see is made up of the same thing that produces your thoughts or is your thoughts. It's the same thing that's on the spiritual realm. And so all of these are actually made up of the same thing, but they're actually just all different rates of vibration. Things that vibrate slower and are more dense appear physical, right? So they're in the physical realm or in our physical existence. Things that have a higher rate of vibration that you can't see them, they're non-physical, but not the highest, are thoughts and are in the mental realm. And again, there's many different modes and kind of like different rates of this. There's a range for all of these. And then of course the highest is the spirit, pure energy, things that are actually in that pure form, like kind of, you can think of it like the Play-Doh or like the clay that molds everything. It's this pure energy. And our connection to all that is, the all being that as well. The Hermetics, for example, believe that the all is mind, everything is mental. They knew that this non-physical thing is what gave birth to the physical, right? And so what does this have to do with the law of neutralization? So let's jump into that a little bit. So for most people, once again, they have the pendulum swing. They have this pendulum going back and forth in their life. So we could call this the good side of things, what people consider good, like they have a good thing happen, they feel good, and this, obviously, just to keep it simple, the bad side of things, right? So they have this good thing happen, and then there's a drop-off, and then this good thing happen and a drop-off, or this bad thing happen, and it's just this pendulum swinging back and forth. But again, what the master is able to do, the one who has mastered the law of rhythm and the law of neutralization, or the principle of rhythm and the principle of neutralization, has learned how to utilize the mental and spiritual realm to allow essentially the pendulum swing to not affect their life, and therefore only experience more of what they actually want to experience. And when we look at something like reality creation, what is reality creation if not being able to experience what it is you actually want to experience, and not being at the whims of the pendulum or the whims of life, being cast away or being thrown about by the winds of life on the ocean of life and just going wherever, right? The reality creator is able to steer the ship. The reality creator knows how to circumnavigate the chaos or embrace the chaos, which would be this other pendulum swing, so that they can still create what they want in their life. And so the master understands that when things are kicking up in the physical, because let's be honest, when people are talking about the pendulum swinging to a bad thing, what they're usually saying is something in their outer world, in their physical life, right? So we can connect these two together, is up in flames, right? A relationship is not going well. Their finances went down. Maybe they got fired from a job. This chaos is coming up, right? This outer world chaos is typically what it is. What the master knows, what the person knows in order to come through this and actually be better for it, is when this is happening. So when there's this huge storm happening, there's all of this chaos happening, right? Is to root themselves in these two places, the spiritual and the mental, and to ignore the physical. And I know this all looks crazy right now, but we will tie it all together. And so instead of getting hooked into what's going on in the physical, so getting hooked into the storm, and most people, when this comes up, again, this physical stuff happens, the storm comes up, most people get hooked into it, right? What happens to most people? They get angry, they get frustrated, they get apathetic, they start feeling guilty, they start feeling shame. However, those who understand the principle of neutralization understand that if you can do exactly what that says, approach whatever is happening in the physical with the pendulum swing from a state of neutrality, the pendulum will pass underneath you rather than being hooked onto you, right? Some people are just being taken by the sway of the pendulum and are experiencing all of this chaos very vividly, emotionally, and mentally. This chaos now through correspondence, they are thinking similar thoughts. They are feeling, correlating emotions, energy in motion that fits with whatever the situation is. But when the principle of neutralization is applied, the person embraces the storm or observes the storm rather than getting hooked into it. It's kind of like the equivalent of being in the eye of the storm and you see it kicking up all around you, but you're unaffected. You're not allowing your inner space and your inner world, these two right here that make up the non-physical, to be affected. And because you are not affected and you're not hooked into this storm, you're actually able to come through the storm. And when this happens, this starts to change. So you're able to come through the storm unscathed because you're not getting hooked. And when you come through the storm by applying neutralization, by being neutral and not reacting to whatever's happening around you, what's happening around you will begin to change. Because a lot of time, this pendulum swing to what we consider the bad, what we consider the chaos, isn't actually a bad thing. A lot of time, it's just a rearrangement. I'm sure you've heard the idea that, a lot of good comes out of chaos, or a lot of order comes out of chaos, and it's very, very true. The reason we call chaos chaos or bad things bad isn't because they are in a nutshell bad or even chaos. It's simply because we don't understand it. We don't know what's happening, so we freak out. For example, the person loses the job and they start catastrophizing. Again, they get hooked in the mental and spiritual. They're in the chaos. They're feeling terrible. The pendulum has taken them. They've been hooked, hook, line, and sinker, just taken for a ride. And now they're feeling terrible. They're thinking terrible. And they're just in that storm, just being buffeted by the storm over and over again. However, if you're able to rise above the storm and see more of the full picture, and see it from a different perspective because you've applied neutralization and you're not hooked. And when you're not hooked, you can now rise above the storm and see, oh, wait a second, I was meant to lose that job because it's making room for this new thing that's coming in. Or that relationship that left, I was meant for that relationship to break down because it's making space for an even greater one to come in. I can't tell you how many times, for example, money has gone down in my life. I've applied the law of neutralization, remained calm, didn't get hooked by the storm, kept my spiritual and mental realms or side of myself high, in high emotions, was feeling good, again, neutral to better, was thinking good thoughts. And then an opportunity to make way more than I was making before comes in, seemingly out of nowhere. But if you get hooked, these opportunities can't come in. Because if you get hooked in the spiritual and mental realm and the chaos, and now you're suddenly thinking and feeling terribly, you're just going to draw more of that to you. I'm sure you understand the law of attraction, right? Like for like. And so if you get hooked by the pendulum, the mental and spiritual gets hooked by that. And you can see people who've had one thing that they deem bad happen in their life, and it ruins their life. Now the trick is, it hasn't ruined their life. They have decided to allow it to ruin their life. Just talk to someone who's been, for example, divorced for decades and how much they still blame that situation for how their life has turned out. Or something happened to them 30, 40 years ago that you can tell they still blame all of these bad things from happening. When people get hooked into this pendulum swing and do not apply this, it really can have that much of a cascading effect where they've never left the storm, and the storm has been there in their life for decades at a time sometimes, right? And then maybe they finally get out of it and they feel a little bit better, and then another pendulum swing comes and it boom, off to the races again, right into another storm. How do you combat this? You apply this neutralization. You do not get hooked, or if you have gotten hooked, you've noticed, oh, I've been hooked by the swing of the pendulum here. You unhook yourself. You remember that, and this is an important one to remember, and this is just, again, through Hermetic principle, and those who understand the secrets of the universe, how our reality works, understand this concept. And that is that the outer world, so the outer world of the physical follows the inner world of the mental and spiritual. So what you are doing in the mental and spiritual world is what's creating your physical world. So if something happens in the physical that's chaos, that's just trying to rearrange things in a new orderly way, and you get hooked into that and start being negative, well then your outer world is going to have to continually follow that negativity that you've now created in your inner world. And we could stop this in its tracks, not get hit by the pendulum, and only get back on the pendulum when it's swinging to what we want it to be swinging to, if we just apply this and unhook ourselves from the storm. And this happens every single time. It's almost like magic, but it isn't magic. It's just nonlinear. It's just the unknown coming into the known, which your mind cannot grasp, so it seems like magic. Everything that we consider supernatural are just higher natural laws operating. But they appear supernatural because we don't understand them or can't analyze them from the analytical mind. So we deem them as magic. We deem them as, or they don't exist, or as supernatural. But what it really is a natural law of a higher order. And that's how it works here. And so if you embrace this storm, this is how you want to apply it, or how to apply this. You embrace the storm. You apply neutralization. The principle of neutralization. You remain neutral. You don't allow this outer world stuff to cling into your inner world, the mental and the spiritual. You stay balanced. Even when things are kicking up around you, You stay in the eye of the storm, therefore you're observing it now from a different perspective, but you're not in it. You're not getting hooked. You're not allowing it to make you feel anger and frustration and all these other things. Again, maybe you get hooked a little bit, but you unhook yourself and you do your best to do that. What happens is you end up coming through the storm. And on the other side of that storm is always a new level of order, coherence, and balance. When you come through the storm, you don't get hooked. And there's two ways that what usually happens for people when the storm is there. Either they get caught in the pendulum, right? So they get caught in this and they're hooked in the storm. This is the people who, again, 20, 30 years, they're blaming something that happened whenever, ruined my life, it's horrible, blah, 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 even though it was just trying to reorganize things to a higher level of order. That's the first thing. So they're continually hooked. Or they see the storm and they go, nope, I'm not engaging with that. The problem with that is this is the person who stays in place and never progresses. They try and stay in a comfort zone the whole time because they're not allowing this so-called chaos, this new level of something to come through, embracing it so that a new level of order, coherence, and balance can come into their lives. And don't get it twisted. If you do not allow for this, that new level you want to be at can't come in. There can't be this rearrangement, this apparent chaos that leads to a new level of order. There can't be this next level up for you, right? For example, if you want a much higher paying job, you gotta, in some way, the other job has to be taken away. If you want the perfect relationship, one that's aligned, if you're in a mediocre one, guess what needs to be taken away? Yet we still deem and label it as chaos because we don't understand what is occurring from what we call the supernatural perspective, but it's just a higher natural law. And so when approached or encountering a situation like this, aim to apply the principle or law of neutralization. Don't get seduced into the pendulum swing. Understand that if you come through this storm with a grounded attitude, with maintaining your inner world, with understanding that the outer world follows the inner world, not the other way around. This is law, this is principle. It's not going away. If you understand that, once you get through that storm, and you will, and you won't suffer through it because, again, you're applying neutralization. Once you do that, there will be a higher order, a higher level of coherence, and a higher level of balance in your own life. Again, I've seen this work in my own life where, again, money's gone down, but I've been doing something, for example, I've been led to do something different. And of course, because I'm not doing the other thing, finances go down. And the first instinct is to panic, get hooked by the swing, blah, blah, blah. But I knew to apply this. Applied it, stuck with it, did the work, trust the process, and boom, seemingly out of nowhere, all of this money doing something I now more enjoyed started coming in by a significant amount. Same with relationships, same with so many things. I've seen this work in my clients. We help them do this. We help them embrace the storm. They're panicking a little. It's like, remember, apply the principle of neutralization. Remember, this is just the pendulum swing. It is setting you up for a new level of order. And when that pendulum swings back out the other way, this new stuff is going to start showing up. And it's going to appear in this almost magical type of way. It is going to do things that you possibly can't even believe right now. This is when we get, and I know you've heard this before, hopefully you can see this down here. You want to know how to make quantum leaps in your life? This is how you do it. Again, if we look at that word quantum, we're talking about energy, the energetic realm, the quantum realm. Spiritual and mental realm. And so if you can maintain your composure in the quantum realm, again, the inner world, the spiritual and mental, the physical will match it eventually if you stay in it long enough, if you embrace that storm, if you don't get hooked in, and you will have a quantum leap. If you've ever seen someone go from living in a certain way to almost very quickly living in another way and being completely different, they've done this at some level. Whether knowingly or unknowingly, they have taken a quantum leap because they've come from this perspective. Without this principle of neutralization, you will just be buffeted by the waves in the sea of life being thrown about without any control. And again, you can't always control the physical in the sense of exactly what shows up, but you can control your inner. You can decide what thoughts you're going to allow into your mental realm. You can control what emotions you're going to entertain, how long you're going to dwell in those emotions. You can control how often you connect to what you are. And again, the higher level of emotion you're in, the more connected to that you are. If you look at the Hawking's scale of consciousness, the higher you are on that scale, the more connection you have to the all, to the divine, to the spiritual, to higher frequencies that bring about different results. You do have a choice when it comes to that, to how you respond to what's happening in the physical. And if you choose to, again, apply neutralization, to neutralize any of those negative emotions that try and sabotage you and come up and get you hooked into that storm, and you maintain your composure, you keep your inner world cultivated and rich and focused on the vision that you have for yourself, you will allow this pendulum swing to pass right underneath you and not get hooked. Being able to observe it, you will allow yourself to be in the eye of the storm. You're seeing these things kick up all around you, but it's not affecting you. The money might be leaving, the relationship might be falling apart, the job might be going out the door, whatever it is, but it actually isn't influencing and affecting you. And if you're able to do that, out the other side, you will have a new level of order, coherence, and balance. You'll level up in your life. A quantum leap will occur. You can't force your way into a quantum leap. You're not going to know exactly how it's going to happen. But by doing this, you start influencing your physical, because that new level of order, coherence, and balance must show up if you don't get hooked. And so this is how you apply the principle of neutralization. Now, something that's going to help you to apply this even further is this video right here, which I would have you go watch next. When combined with the principle of neutralization, when you do this together, you're going to be creating a reality faster in the ways that you want than ever before. So I recommend watching this next.